We talked about what would be the Black Mental Health Alliance's response to providing a solutions-focused strategy to healing in our community. And we came up with a multi-point plan, but one of those points, if you will, was that we would convene on a monthly basis. We would bring national thought leaders and community thought leaders together to talk about one of the topics and one of the issues that we see that's community. And that it just would not be an opportunity for a discussion, but that it would be proactive and solutions focused. And so the people that you will be hearing from this evening have been charged to do just that. That they will present to you what they have actually been working on in their respective organizations as it relates to this topic, and then infusing, maybe not each one of them, but the point is to infuse mental health strategies and solutions into what they're doing. And specifically this evening, we're going to be looking at the social determinants of health, the economic development, as economic development impacts our social determinants of health and our health, whether it be our physical health or our mental health, and then really looking at how that then impacts our employability, employment, job opportunities, and even entrepreneurship. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And I say talk about because we're going to have a discussion. I want all of you to feel like you may not be sitting at this table, but you're part of the discussion. And so we really want you to feel like you can jot down a note, ask a question. We have a great moderator here. We have great speakers. And so we want you to feel like you're part of that discussion. Is that okay? Yes. All right. Yeah, I'm a traditional Baptist girl, so I need some call and response. Just help you out. Help me out. Help me out. Like I need an amen every now and then. So, okay. Hey. All right now. Okay. So just a few housekeeping things, and they're really not housekeeping things. It's my honor and my pleasure to acknowledge. We can't do this for free without some support. And so we have been very fortunate to have organizations and individuals support our efforts. And so you saw them up on the screen. Annie E. Casey was one of those partners. The Hope Health Systems has been a great partner for us as it relates to ensuring that we're able to have CEUs available. And if you're here and you want the CEUs, make sure that you see the ladies at the counter when you came in, because you need to sign in at the beginning and the end. So if you didn't do that, we need you to do that as well. We have had great partnership with Associated Black Charities. Ms. Diane Bell McCoy is here today. And Behavioral Health Systems Baltimore, of course, Coppin State University, and then a number of other organizations that have lent their space to us without any charge, including New Shiloh Baptist Church, the UB Blake Center, and in March, we're actually going to be at the Isaac Mayer Frederick Douglass Maritime Museum. So we're very fortunate to have great sponsors in that regard. And so if you would, and most of all, I just also want to say that it was interesting that most recently, an organization that was very interested in what we were doing is the Maryland Humanities Council. And one of the reasons that they were interested in what we were doing was because Miss Alma Roberts met with them, and maybe she was meeting with them about another organization, but she threw Black Mental Health Alliance's name into the hat, and they bit. And so they were very interested and excited about what we were doing, and they sponsored our series, especially over these last few months of our fiscal year. So for all of these great partners, we say thank you, and if you would just help me, even though they may or may not be here, help me give them a round of applause. Is Dr. Murray here? Okay, Dr. Murray, if you come up. Dr. Murray, Dr. Tracy Murray, is the Acting Associate Dean of the Health and Human Services Department here at Coppin State University. And Dr. Murray and her faculty and staff are actually hosting us this evening. They're hosting this space, and they're hosting the reception. And I'm sure she will do this as well, but I just wanted to give a good old-fashioned shout-out to Dr. Crystal Day Black. She's a friend of the Black Mental Health Alliance. She's a friend of mine, and whenever I call her, she slides up real close to Dr. Murray and say, can we help them out? And I appreciate that. So Dr. Murray, if you just give the audience some greetings, we'd appreciate that.
Good evening to everybody. I'm so thankful that everybody's able to be here. I do want to say, just as an update, since last time that I came, I did get the full appointment actually for the Dean of the College of Health Professions.
Very good. Yeah.
But I do appreciate it's the faculty as it serve as vehicles to make me know about initiatives that they are so much so embrace, and as well as also it's very in keeping with the goals of Coppin State University, our college, and also our university, which has for our programs nursing, allied health, we have behavioral health sciences, we have education, we also have business, and with many areas that embrace the social determinants of health. We focus on vulnerable and underserved populations, so it's greatly keeping with our overall mission and our goals. But outside of that, specifically within the college, we embrace that with our students who have some social issues. We recently have won funding for AmeriCorps Vista, which we're focusing on specifically was this food insecurity, which happens at universities as well as also within the community. And one of my major goals, so this is very much so in keeping with the Black Mind Matters, as also with what happened on North Avenue, the uprising, is to have it be a presence, not just only here at Coppin, but also throughout West Baltimore. We are doing many engaging activities in the community with churches, faith-based organizations. Our students serve as other vehicles besides our faculty members. We continue to write grants so that we can make an impact specifically here in West Baltimore. And I'm so thankful that part of the minds is one aspect, but holistically looking at the total body. We have also other faculty members and representatives here with us as well. We have 2 community health centers, and I'm a director over both of those. One is obviously here on this campus, and we also have one which is Coppin Clinic in St. Francis, but again, we focus on vulnerable underserved populations. So we look forward to looking at a holistic approach and obviously looking at telehealth and telepsych as other avenues to making the minds be exposed in many ways. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Dr. Murray. We really appreciate your support. Next, I'd like to introduce to you a fairly new friend, but probably have been friends with him since the first actual call to action where we had a speaker. And his name is Mr. Joseph Daniels. And I did not mention him when I mentioned the list of sponsors and supporters because I wanted to single him out for a moment. After the first forum that we had in July of 2015, Mr. Daniels came to me and he said, I want to sponsor one of your forums. And I, as an executive director of a small nonprofit, I get excited when people want to give me money. So I was excited about that. He said, but I really want it to be around the subject of economic development. And so if I could have a conversation with you about that and what some of my thoughts are, that is what I'm really interested in sponsoring. And so really for several months, he and I have been in conversation about this night, this forum, these speakers, and just want to recognize him. He is the president of the JOSA Group, LLC. He was a Verizon executive for a number of years. He is doing a lot of other work in the community with other nonprofit organizations, but I'm so glad that he saw something in our organization that attracted him and had within him say that he wanted to be a part, and he didn't want to just talk the talk, but he wanted to walk the walk, and he also wanted to open his checkbook. So we're excited to have Mr. Daniels, Mr. Joseph Daniels here today, and I've asked him to introduce Secretary Schulz.
Thank you so much. I don't think I need a mic. I think I can project my voice, but nevertheless, good evening, everyone. As Jan had mentioned, I became very much interested in what the organization was doing because sometimes you just get tired of sitting on the sidelines. I sat on the sidelines back in 1968 because I was too young to go out and try to stop people from doing things that I thought were unnecessary in order to express themselves. And the second time that I saw individuals come out of their homes to express themselves, I was in California, watching it on CNN. So, first time I was too young to do anything about it, too naive. I'm not too old now. I can make some changes. I can do some things. And that's why I'm here. As Jan has said, I spent 32 years in the telecommunications industry, building broadband networks. But one of the things that impacted me the most was the fact that I saw the technological impact on jobs. Because of the technological change that occurred, workforce will reduce, some cases 75%. And these individuals were not trained in any way, shape, or form to make that transition into this new market, into a service-based industry. I don't want to see that happen again. So I'm here as a part of a larger group to support what's happening in Baltimore City. I love this city. I love this state. And one of the hashtags I came up with, not to put you on the spot, Mike, but one Baltimore, one Maryland. Because I strongly believe in my heart of hearts that as Baltimore goes, the region goes, the state goes, and this country will then grow as well. So in that note, I would like to, it's my pleasure to introduce Secretary Kelly M. Schulz. Ms. Schulz was confirmed as Secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor, Licensing, and Regulation, DLLR, in February of 2015. The agency employs over 2,000 workers and has an operating budget of over $375 million. As a former member of the House of Delegates representing Frederick County, she served on the Economic Matters Committee from 2011 to 2015. In addition to local issues, she took on special interests as well in legislation regulating to banks and other financial institutions, business occupations and professions, economic development, labor and employment, unemployment, insurance, and workers' compensation. That's a lot of activity that you've been engaged in. But she brought a lot of wealth and knowledge to the Maryland Department of Labor with her years of experience working in the private sector as well as small business, from selling real estate to working as a program manager for a defense contractor and part owner in a cybersecurity firm. Now, she did let me know that she's not a technical person, but she's a very business person. So one of the strengths of being a very good business person is not knowing all of it, but having knowledge enough to bring in the right people around you. So that says a lot about the individual themselves. So ladies and gentlemen and special guests, it is indeed my pleasure to introduce Secretary Kelly Schulz, Department of Labor, Licensing, and Regulation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Phew, that's a mouthful. And that's only partly what we do on a day-to-day basis at the department. But thank you very much. I want to thank Jan for the invitation. And actually, I'm going to thank the Lieutenant Governor because I believe the invitation was actually meant for the Lieutenant Governor, and he is unfortunately not able to attend. So I get the wonderful privilege to being here with you this evening. And what a great honor this is. And I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. So I'll appreciate a couple amens along the way, too. I'm just saying. So, but that was in Detroit. So, but I really think that we're here to focus. And I was very pleased to speak with Joseph prior to speaking here with you this evening and talk about what your focus has been in the past and what your focus is for the future and the results that you're looking to get out of forums such as this. And that's very educational to me. I brought several pages of notes, but I'm only going to reference them a little bit because I think I feel what you guys are here to talk about. And you guys are here to talk about opportunity. And opportunity comes in a lot of different wrappings and packages. And opportunity means something different to everybody. I've been in my position for the last 13 months, and I have seen different types of opportunity and different people focusing on ways in which they can enrich their lives and ways, by the way, that other people can help with the enrichment of other people's lives. And I'm just going to acknowledge for a moment what had occurred last April in the uprising. And I work just right down the street from here. I work on Calvert Street, right directly across from the Baltimore Sun building, so if you ever want to come visit me, feel free to come visit. But that was something, even though I grew up in Detroit, the uprisings in Detroit that were referenced from the 1960s, I was not aware. I was too young. I was just being born, actually, during that period of time. But we looked at it within the administration as a new opportunity for us to see what we could do in order to be able to give back. I haven't spent a lot of time in Baltimore City previously. I have lived in Frederick for the last 12 years. I came to Baltimore City just like other outsiders do, and they visit the National Harbor, or the Inner Harbor, and they go to the aquarium, and they go to some events. After April, I got to know this city. And I didn't get to know this city by watching the news, and I didn't get to know the city by reading the newspapers or listening to the folks that are out there pontificating. I got to know the city by speaking to groups like this, by going to the community organizations, by going to the community leaders, by going to the churches on Saturdays and Sundays, and understanding what the needs were. Because quite frankly, how was I to know what those needs were unless somebody was going to tell me what their needs were? And so that was a major focus. And I will be very frank and tell you that Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford led that charge. And he pulled all of the organizations within the state government together and said, okay, tell us what our plan is. And so we began to develop a plan. And part of that plan came from the federal government. It came from the Department of Labor, and it came from them saying, okay, we want to be able to help, and we want to be able to provide some resources and efforts for programs that are going to be beneficial for the long term. Because I can't tell you how many community meetings that I went to, and they sat around and they had given their time to us and to speak to us, where they said, stop, Kelly, don't come to us and offer any money. We've had you politicians come in here and offer us money in the past, and the money just goes away. We have studied this to death. We need to do something. So if you're going to give us $5 million and $4.5 million of that is going to go to staff trying to figure out what to do, we're not interested. Right?
Right, exactly.
So we were, thank you. So we were here to say, okay, what can we do? So we immediately joined forces with the Mayor's Office of Economic Development, MOED, and worked with them to create grant programs that are going to be with those partners that we already have really great successful relationships with. Many of those you have heard about already. The Annie Casey Foundation, the Weinberg Foundation, Living Classrooms, Habitat for Humanity, JARC, the Jane Addams Resource Center, Jumpstart. We all know about Jumpstart and the opportunities. Those are training programs to be able to look at the people and the opportunities that they need in order to be able to create that life that's different than the life that they knew before. So we started looking at different types of opportunities, and many of those opportunities were already made possible through our organization, but people look at the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation and say, what the heck do you do, and how do you do it, and how are you helping us to create our own opportunities? So part of what we have been doing for the last year is going around telling people about the opportunities that we do have and the things that we have been doing to familiarize ourselves not only with you, but allow you to familiarize yourselves with us. So some of those programs, most of those programs are through our Workforce Development and Adult Learning Office. And I think that that is a major, major role in the way that we move forward. Education is so important. That creates the opportunity. But education is different for everyone. Education can mean, your high school diploma as a gateway into entrepreneurship. Education could mean skilled training in a way that you go into an apprenticeship program and you decide on the career pathway in which you want to be able to lead your life. Education could mean a 2-year degree at a local community college. Or, like Coppin State University, education could mean a 4-year and beyond education that's going to lead you into the opportunity of your choice. To educate people on the choices that they have and the career paths that are out there and available. And by doing so, we need to educate the educators.
Amen.
Because I am a mother of 2 20-something children, and when they went through high school, when they went through the K through 12 educational system, they had a couple of choices. They had graduate and go to college. My older son did that beautifully. Or they could graduate and graduate. And we said, okay, what's wrong with this? Where are the other opportunities? What happens after graduation? So we have invested all of this time for 18 years of our children's lives telling them how important it was to get a high school education. And then what? And like one of the speakers that I love to listen to, the key phrase, so what? So what? You've invested this, you've worked hard as a parent to make sure that that kid just graduates. By golly, you want that child to get a high school diploma because, so what? So the conversation has started with our Maryland State Department of Education and what we can do to provide another option, another opportunity. You graduate from high school because we think it's a good thing as parents and educators and people of our society to be able to have that K through 12 education. But while you're being educated in your public schools, why not develop those alternative skills that is going to be beneficial so that the day you graduate, you are employable in positions that are going to be worthwhile positions that are going to create your opportunity of choice. So that's the conversations that we've started. We've started a little bit in talking about youth apprenticeships. Our legislative body last year passed a bill that allowed for youth apprenticeships, a pilot program in 2 county school facilities across the state. It was a competitive opportunity. So what we're doing in some pilot schools right now is saying, okay, so how are we going to create an apprenticeship program while we have a 16-year-old junior in high school? Now that's exciting. And by the way, you've got 10 months to do it. And I said, oh, well, that's really exciting. And no money. And I said, okay, well, now you've opened up the challenge. And so we've been going around doing a different type of campaigning and fundraising to be able to explain to industries what is happening out in the world. But this is where all of the roads come together. You have the academic road, you have the government entity road, and then, Joseph, we have the business world. And how do those business partners that you've heard about today, how do they come into play with the future of our children and our young adults and the pathways in which they're going to go? You make them the leading partners. You have them determine what their needs are so that we can help them with their needs. So that we're not going to the businesses and saying, okay, we think this is what you need. We're going to train 2,500 auto mechanics this week, and you're going to create the jobs for them. No. As Joseph stated, the business community is really great. They're entrepreneurs out there. They're business people. They understand where they want to go. They understand economic development. It's our job to make it a little bit easier for them. So we have gone to large groups of industries and in the sectors in which you're familiar with, the skilled trades, construction, electrical, plumbing, but we've reached out also to those STEM occupation and those industry leaders that are leading the force in technology and manufacturing and engineering and science and yes, even agriculture in some of the rural parts of our state. And said, what are the needs that you have? Because we have many of our students and our young adults that are looking for opportunities. Where do you see opportunities? And you know what? They perked up just like that. And they said, boy, I can tell you, we have an aging population. In manufacturing across the state, the average age of somebody working in the manufacturing industry is 55 years old. We're not training enough young people to go into manufacturing. And when I'm talking manufacturing, I'm not talking the lines like I remember when I grew up in Detroit. We're talking advanced manufacturing where you need engineering background, where you need math and you need science. I could never walk into a manufacturing facility today and even think about running one of those machines. I don't know if any of you have visited any lately, but they're advanced. They're not kidding when they say advanced manufacturing. But we need to train them. So how do we do it? Do we say, okay, businesses, this is where you see the flow. Tell us how you're going to train them. No, we create partnerships. Because anybody that's involved in any type of business entity understands that the way that you are most successful is by building those partnerships. And within my agency, I'm just going to call it the Department of Labor for short because the rest is really long and twists up my tongue. At the Department of Labor, we identified who those stakeholders were from the very beginning. The stakeholders that have equal shares in our partnerships are the employers, 25%. The employees, 25%. A government entity of some kind, whether it be federal, state, or local, 25%. That's combined, not to each one. Let's not give all of them all of that. And then the consumer. Because what is the consumer of our funding, of our efforts? What do they deserve from our creation of these partnerships? And so we have formed this, and we have these stakeholder groups, and everyone has come together, and they have created programs that are training and putting people to work in occupations that they never thought that they would ever be working in. And it's successful. We have some partners here in the room. So there's a program started in 2013. It was passed, actually, I was a legislator in the Maryland General Assembly at the time, and it's called the Earn Maryland program. And the focus of that program, and I was fully supportive of it. By the way, workforce development is a nonpartisan issue. And I was fully supportive of this program because the idea behind the program, which is the first in the nation idea in moving forward in workforce development and training, was that the businesses and the industries were going to determine what it is they wanted and how they were going to get there. They were looking at the rest of the world. They were looking at the academic world. They were looking at the government entities. They were even looking at the nonprofit world saying, okay, we're going to allow you guys to come in and help us to create our bigger opportunity, but we're going to tell you what we want and how we want it done. What a spectacular concept, allowing those businesses out there to be able to focus on what it is their needs are. And they're being very, very successful. Today, I'm really proud to say that we have requested through the governor's budget full funding again for our Earn Maryland program. $4 million of our state general fund dollars are going into this program. Knock on wood that the legislature agrees with us so that we can have some really exciting stories. So I want to tell you one story that I had, and this wasn't in my script. So I'm just going to go off script here for a second. The Jumpstart program, which is run through an organization, the Association of Builders and Contractors and JOTF, some of the great leaders in workforce across the state. They've had this program for about 10, 11 years. And I just went to a big graduation ceremony a couple weeks ago that they had down here at the Inner Harbor. And they invited me to come in to view the class and to kind of look to see what it is they do. Now, most of the students, I would say 95% of the students are ex-offenders. A lot of them are not even young adults, never have had a real job. 35, 40-year-old men that have been incarcerated for most of their lives without knowing that there's other opportunities out there in the world. So I'm sitting there in the back, like you guys in the back, because everyone's too afraid to come forward. So I'm watching, and one of the graduates from the program gets up and speaks. And he's currently a 42-year-old man. He started in Jumpstart when he was 35 years old. He had spent most of his life in prison, but when he wasn't in prison, he was able to father a couple of children. And he was married, and he was divorced, and he got out of prison. And he said that he promised himself that if he were ever to be presented with another opportunity, he wasn't going to let that opportunity pass. And he had no idea what that opportunity was going to be. Somebody introduced him to the Jump Start program. He spent several months in classes at night down in East Baltimore, going to classes, learning math from the very basics, learning science from the very basics. He was given the opportunity to choose a skilled trade. He chose the electrical trade. He immediately was enrolled into an apprenticeship program. That apprenticeship program led him to an apprenticeable job. So his first year in his apprenticeship program, he was starting to work on job sites. And if you know anything about apprenticeship programs, you get benefits and you get days off and you have this real job, and it's a 4-year program. He finished his apprenticeship and he was offered full-time employment by his employer. And this fall, he is the entrepreneur and he started his own electrical company. And he's much more compelling than I am, by the way. He would have gotten an amen after that. But he was able to, because of this opportunity, he was able to rekindle the relationship between his children. He got married. He owns his own home. He's helping others with their own homes. And he's talking to students every chance he can about the opportunities that are out there, because there are opportunities there. And the possibilities are endless. And that's just one program. We have 39 others just like that. And so I'm really thankful that you talked about the one Baltimore and the one Maryland. I'm a firm believer, as a resident of Frederick County, that Baltimore City's rebirth is the rebirth of the state of Maryland. And the only way we can do that is to put every other issue aside and focus on what we think is our opportunity. It's an immediate opportunity. The possibility is right there. We just have to grasp onto it. So when I talk to organizations like this organization, and spectacular, by the way, you guys have done wonderful things with educating the community on these types of events. And I'm sure them educating you on these.
Amen.
That's how it's supposed to be. That conversation and that communication amongst all of the organizations goes so far. Getting multiple people in the room that have the same goal and comparing stories and looking at different ways that we can move this city and this state forward is the only way that it's going to be successful. So part of our plan at the Department of Labor, because the federal government told us to, we have to put together a new workforce development plan for the state of Maryland. It's a very long term, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It's very confusing, but in order for us to keep continuing to receive federal dollars for our workforce development, we have to comply with these new federal regulations. So for the past year, we have been working with over 350 stakeholders and learning to see what it is that we need to do in order to be able to encompass everybody's ideas of what their opportunities are. And how educational is that? We are in the process of approving, I gave it my final approval, the governor's going to give his final approval, of a state plan that's about that thick. Because it needs to, and because we had a choice. We had a choice to take the easy way out, or we had a choice to encompass all of the different areas that we think need to be enrolled into what our ultimate goal is. So we created this plan with a lot of different industries and a lot of different stakeholders in mind. That means for the first time, bringing the Department of Aging into our workforce efforts. Because why not? They run workforce in their Department of Aging. Why not bring them into our programs? The Department of Human Resources. Why not bring TANF recipients into our workforce plan? They are getting workforce dollars. Why not look to see how there is this overlapping of resources so that we can all combine together for our ultimate goal? Why not reach out to the corrections and public safety and say, how are you going to continue your efforts with us in workforce because, by the way, my department does just about everything. So we do all of the correctional education. We do all of the GED training inside of the facilities and the institutions. We do workforce training. Let's all pull together and do that everywhere. And DOORS, which is those that have mental and physical disabilities. Because that is how we believe that moving forward, workforce development and training and education and business and industry are all going to be able to come full circle and say, this is how we're going to be successful. That's how Baltimore is going to achieve their goals. That's how the state of Maryland is going to achieve their goals. And then once we start showing the rest of the world that we're achieving these goals together, that's when you see the businesses start coming back. That's when you start seeing people invest in West Baltimore. Kevin Plank is doing it. He just gave $6.5 million to East Baltimore to build a brand new facility because he believes that investing in those areas where they are most at need and where people are putting all of their resources and their efforts together, that's a winning ticket. Those people get it. We get it. Well, I mean, starting to get it. I'm still new. But I think all of you get it too. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to come speak to you about some of the things that we're doing because I'm obviously pretty excited about it. There's a lot of things about, a day-to-day running of a large department with a state agency that is not really all that sexy, I gotta tell you. But when you talk about opportunities and workforce development and the great stories and the graduates of these programs that you get to meet, it makes every day worth coming down to Calvert Street and sometimes listening to jackhammers outside of my office. There's always construction at the corner, but it makes it all worth it. And I promised Joseph that I would take a couple of questions, so if anybody has a couple of questions that they may have.
Leave, right?
I have to leave, but I'm a talker. Right. So if anybody has a couple of questions, I'm more than happy to...
We'll take a couple of questions and then we need to assemble our panel. If anyone has any for Secretary Schulz.
Yes, ma'am. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. We call it WIOA. It's the first rendition in the federal government's workforce initiative in the last 16 years. So it's a completely new set of guidelines that is bringing all of the partners back together. WIOA.
And I know that you said you have a number of partners. And I know that you have like 3 countries. So I'm wondering, namely which ones are like the key partners or the ones that you work closely with?
Well, partners, we have a lot of local partners.
Well, the ones that would be most instrumental. So I know this is like a weird question.
There are no weird questions.
But the ones that you see that you and your department see as most instrumental in bringing about economic change.
So that's going to be a multifaceted answer.
Okay.
So when you talk about the nonprofit community, those are obviously very important partners to us because they are able to go out and fundraise and to help with those efforts. Specifically, some of them I named earlier, the Annie Casey Foundation, the Weinberg Foundation, Living Classrooms, Habitat for Humanity, the multiple apprenticeable programs that are out there. I'm going to leave someone out and someone's going to get offended, but there are many of those. We also, there's a manufacturers alliance that is very, very helpful. But local partnerships and the communities that these programs are located in are just as equally as important. So our relationship with the county governments and the jurisdictions and having them be participants in what's happening locally within their community, they're extremely important. The faith community has been extremely important in helping to guide us in a way that we need to move forward. And the academic community, who has been hugely supportive of some of the advancements that we're making in the K through 12 education and the higher education when it comes to specific skill training and certificate programs, which for those that are going out to find a job right now, those are the types of programs that we really need to have. And I have a huge long list of the businesses out there that are critical, obviously, to our role.
My question is that you mentioned the education system, kids getting to high school, graduating, and then after that, then what? And then my concern is what kind of partnership do we have with the education system for them to change? They're so slow to change. And when you really, what hit me when you're talking about the 42-year-old young man, his career in the system should never have taken place had we did what we're supposed to have done in the education system. And so my concern is, what are we doing to get the education system to change?
You know, this is my perspective on it, and I'm not an expert and I'm not a scholar in history or academics. I can only tell you what I see right now. I see, for the first time that I have really been following this over the course of my adult life, the reality that the education system is there to educate, and they're doing their job with educating. The legislature last year, as a result of recommendations that came down from a study, they said, well, the education system can't do it on their own because they're not business people. So they, in their ultimate wisdom, incorporated other state agencies that have to do with business and economic development to help to guide them to where they need to be. So this specific apprenticeship program that we have, it's divided into two parts. One is the education curriculum that we need to have for these STEM students to be able to learn that academic piece of it, right? So they still have an academic lesson that they need to learn. But why not bring workforce into the schools? The education academics, they were not designed to do that, right? So we don't need to reteach them that. You need for us to go in, or someone similar to us, and say, these are the businesses that can help. These are the opportunities that we can bring into the school with apprenticeship programs starting at the age of 16 and offering these kids. They've been doing it somewhat in CTE, right, and VOTEC. When I was a kid, we called it VOTEC, right? So they were doing part of that, but having business leaders there to be able to outreach into the community on a regular basis and for us to provide that input is critical to how you're going to make change, because we talk a lot about silos. We talk a lot about those brick walls that go up and everyone, this is your job, you do this. This is your job and you do this. And supposedly you're supposed to get to the same outcome, but you never do because there's never any of this. And sometimes it's pretty and sometimes it's not pretty. But it's all for the ultimate good. And I think that that is the future of where we're going with this type of planning, is to be able to bring multiple stakeholders into the educational realm. And I think that that's the wave of the future. They're talking about it on the national level. They're definitely talking about it here at the state and the local level as well.
I just would like to thank you for coming.
Yes.
And we never have enough time. I was joking with Michael Cryor earlier and telling him that almost every time we do this, we run out of time. And even people have flashed the lights on us.
I'm going to get out of your way so you can have your time.
Right. No, but I just want, we just appreciate that we can have you here and we can touch you. And that you can, have dialogue with us, have conversation with us. And we know all your people now, so we're going to invite you back again.
All right.
When we have more time.
I would love that. And not only can you, touch me, you can call me. I have a phone and I have email, just like the rest of the world.
Exactly.
So if anybody does have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. That's our job.
Okay.
That's what we do.
We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Most of us are on some type of social media, and so they have asked me to remind you to please tweet or put a post up on Facebook or take a picture and put it on Instagram. And if you do any of that, would you please use hashtag Black Minds Matter when you do that. Also, I'm going to ask you if you would silence your phones. I didn't really hear any phones, but I forgot to say that in the beginning. And let's see. I also would like to let the panelists know, and Diane Bell McCoy is going to introduce you, that we have a timekeeper. And one of the things that when we have these little roundtable discussions, my staff and I, about these forums, we always talk about what we could have done differently, how we could do it better. And to manage the time, we just want to help you know how much time you have. And so you'll see someone stand over there and they'll flash up 5 minutes and then they'll flash up 0, which means you're finished. And just so that we can manage the time, because we do start in the evening and we want people to have the opportunity to ask questions. That's the only reason. And I have the task of being the taskmaster, so I'm going to do that. So without further ado, I want to introduce my friend Diane Bell McCoy. I'm going to tell a couple of stories too, and I'm not going to read her whole bio. I'm going to introduce Diane by telling these stories. One, of course, Diane is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Associated Black Charities. And for those of you who do not know what Associated Black Charities is, it is a public foundation credited for its work as a catalyst for statewide advocacy, policy design, and innovative transactional strategies as it relates to the impact of structural racism in depressing the economic and health outcomes for the African American community. That's a mouthful, right? So that means she has a big job. A couple of things about Diane Bell McCoy is that when I came, and I'm saying back to the Black Mental Health Alliance almost 3 years ago, Diane Bell McCoy was one of the first people that I called. And I looked to Diane as a mentor and a coach, a sister, and a friend. And as I was transitioning back to the Black Mental Health Alliance, because I was the executive director in the early 90s through 2000, and just trying to get a lay of the land as it related to nonprofit work in Baltimore, Diane graciously took me to lunch and shared where she thought we could partner together. And so I am eternally grateful to her for that. And then when we started this forum and I started looking for collaborators and partners, in addition to, I see my good friend Dr. Nell Prim in the back now, so it gives me strength to see her and Alma in the room with me because they've been with me from the very beginning. I reached out to Diane to see if the Associated Black Charities would support us. And those of you who know me may know that you might get an email late at night or early in the morning, but I never expect people to respond because I'm like, nobody's up but me. But Diane was up at like midnight and responded immediately that Associated Black Charities would support us. So she has been supportive of the Black Mental Health Alliance and this forum series from day one. Diane serves on many boards. I don't see how she has time to serve on all these boards and do all the great work that they do at Associated Black Charities, but she does. And she has received numerous recognitions and awards. And I am introducing you to the President and Chief Executive Officer of Associated Black Charities. But more importantly to me, I am introducing you to my friend, Diane Bell McCoy.
Thank you. That's a heck of an opening. And thank you. I see lots of friends in the audience and lots of friends in terms of panelists. And so without further ado, if I can ask our panelists to come up front. And so this is time for their presentation and then absolute time for your questions and interaction, because I've been given my instructions from my good friend in terms of, and I'm glad to know that there's a timekeeper, because I actually thought I was asked to moderate because I'm known for that. I'll cut people off in a minute.
Okay.
Yes. Tell me you got a time limit and I'm good to move that forward.
Diane, that's your phone, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's my phone.
And so let me just, as you come forward, let me just give you a brief introduction. And I guess we're going to go by alpha order, Michael, so you get to be first in terms of by virtue of how I received the materials. But I also want to say that each of them are going to present for 10 minutes. And what they've been asked to present about is very clearly this space around economic empowerment in terms of this whole issue of black minds and that critical nature of the health disparities, economic empowerment, and how all of that gets connected, but not just from a theoretical perspective, but what the Black Mental Health stands for is about what the action is. And so they're going to each present from that framework and then ask for your questions, because in the end, and I think you talked about this earlier, in the end, in terms of this series this year, I'm so proud of Black Mental Health Alliance, is to really put all this together in terms of what is possible here in Baltimore. And so with that, in terms of Michael Cryor, I get to introduce very briefly, although you've seen his bio up there, and this is also introducing a friend for me. Michael, as you all know, in terms of is currently the chair of One Baltimore, but he's also president of the Cryor Group, LLC, which is a consultant business that's devoted to strategic communication, which is really Michael's absolute phenomenal passion, strength, skills, everything you can name of in terms of that space. He can facilitate large agreements, and for those in the room that don't know, that Michael was critical in Constellation coming here to Baltimore and back and forth on the private plane in terms of Chicago, in terms of with the chairman and CEO. But Michael's not just there in terms of Exelon and a whole host of other Kaiser Permanente in terms of his clients. Michael is about Baltimore. So that, I think, is pretty much a very important part of this introduction as the chair for One Baltimore in terms of what he does and a numerous amount of energy, passion, degree, experience he brings to this job in terms of what he brings to this is not a job for Michael. Let me just really be very clear about this. This really is a labor of love. And I can say that absolutely knowing that for a fact. And so with that, I'm going to have Michael present first for his first 10 minutes.
Thank you, Diane. Good evening, everyone. Delighted to be here. I have a long history with Coppin, and I have a personal connection to those in Black mental health. I'm formally trained initially as a psychologist. Spent some years at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York and Lincoln Mental Health Center. So I'm feeling very much at home, and the framework for psychology and mental health, frankly, in many ways, the cumulative effects of years and years of despair and discrimination, be it a matter of housing or unemployment, frankly, is a matter of trauma. It results in trauma. It results in a kind of almost cultural DNA trauma that we inherit almost from one generation to the other. And so how do we begin to break the cycle and the historical cycle? We don't do it in a matter of weeks or months. We don't celebrate it in the course of 1 year of the Freddie Gray event. It begins with a real process, which I think is rooted in work. It's rooted in work. I give a lot of credit to Secretary Schulz, and frankly, I got to give a lot of credit to Diane. Diane really should be here. I should be moderating. Diane has such a wealth of perspective and knowledge about all of these issues. But there's such a large constellation of things that constitute the world that we have to modify. And where we begin, frankly, is a matter of where you choose to start, but we choose to start with a matter of work. And it isn't simply work for the sake of a job. It's how do we create an ecosystem and a relationship between the various components that increase the likelihood that we can sustain that environment and that ecosystem. Lots of things. I loved a lot of things that the Secretary said about workforce and about working across lines. We are a silo-driven society in many ways. And we do things with people we know. And we do things in a certain way. And so our comfort working outside of what we tend to know is difficult for people because change is tough. But what I do find is that we are far less intentional about the work we propose to do on behalf of the people we talk about. It's also the matter of our perspective with respect to how we and what we think about the people we propose to do something for. There's a very elitist attitude about this, folks, whether we admit it or not. We're very elitist about who we help and who needs help and the gap between how well off we are and how poor others are. And so it affects not only the foundations and government, it affects those who claim to be helpful. Right? So let's just start with the truth about how we approach this matter. We recognize that finding work is not simply a matter of finding work. It's really more about exploring the full range of the human potential. People need not end up simply having a job if the potential for that person is to also own something and to create work not only for themselves but for others. But very often we are limited in terms of how much we apply that frame to a world that speaks differently, that appears differently. We impose such a set of values on the world that needs help in a way that makes it very hard for us to help nearly as much as we choose and as we can. In the course of the last several months, we've been, as I said, working on creating what I hope is an ecosystem around the world of technology primarily, but hopefully transferable to other industries. And that includes organizing our business community in a way that engages the business community with workforce, with community, such that the end product really is defined by what the world of work needs. I believe the Secretary Schulz said that herself. And so there are irrefutable truths irrespective of who says them. And the fact is, we are not creating new ideas. What I'm hoping is that we create new intentions, that we create a new level of energy and sustained commitment that frankly gives what, in many cases, are good ideas that show germs of potential, and we kill it with the lack of attention. And so we have to find ways to sustain that attention. It's very hard to do that, too, without money. We have a lot of people in workforce. Diane will tell you, we got a lot of folk in workforce, and frankly, we don't have enough work for a lot of folk even to be in workforce. And so we've got to create a bigger pie. We've got to create a bigger opportunity. This is not limited, obviously, to work. It's not limited just to the people, I should say, in workforce development. We have to inspire. We have to push those who provide work to provide it. When you think about the kinds of jobs that in fact are available, that go unfilled, that could be filled by people of all across the spectrum, there are tons of jobs and tons of people. In the world of technology alone, there are 20,000+ jobs in our region that go unfilled. We need to fill them. I can't tell you in great detail tonight, but you will hear very soon about a local commitment which will demonstrate a local commitment to hiring more people locally. When you think about the supply chains, for example, that supply our large companies, our large institutions, those large procurement agreements are often negotiated elsewhere. And we don't really care, frankly, whether the toilet paper or the wax comes from Baltimore or Chicago. We just want wax. But when you think about it, the opportunity to impact those supply chains, to make those products available in our local community, to be purchased by local companies, and if you really want to think about it, to be manufactured by local companies. And if it's not currently a capability, a product that is being manufactured, can you create the capacity to produce that kind of company locally? I had a very interesting conversation today with a group from the United Kingdom about apprenticeships and bringing money in to support apprenticeships. And last week, a group talking about from Great Britain to create an advanced manufacturing company. The thing about that's particularly interesting, whether it works or not, I like the sound of that, is that we propose to have 40% of that company owned by people trained in the industries that we're talking about. So it isn't just working, but people have a stake, a sense of equity in that. Is there cards? I don't know if I'm going too far. Who's got the cards? I feel like I'm good. I feel like I'm in Congress. I want to reserve the balance of my time. The truth of the matter is that One Baltimore cannot be looked at or seen as a program or project, certainly not one that's limited to a matter of months or years. If we're not doing this for 5 or 10 or 15 years, we have not invested sufficiently. I would hope, however, that at some point that it need not exist as a separate entity, that we would have incorporated enough of it into the regular business of government and policy and in organizations that are already set up to do that. If we're still doing it, then we obviously have a lot more work to do. But I'm hopeful as I watch and as I see people wanting to find ways to invest and to engage. There is a real interest. I think people want to do, in many cases. Well, let me modify that. People want to do what they want to do. They don't necessarily do what they need to do. And our challenge is to find a way to cause people to do what frankly inspires confidence, increases the likelihood of success, creating new partnerships and new relationships. It's amazing how few people actually meet new people and how few they want to meet new people. But I also know this, as you get older, someone said, I have somebody I want you to meet. I think they'd be a great friend to you. And I said, I don't need any new friends. I got enough friends. 5 minutes? Really? Okay. Well, look, I'm gonna surrender the balance of my time, and I will pick it up as we do questions and answers. Okay?
You can keep moving forward in terms of, I don't want to interrupt the flow. And so again, by taking into consideration we were going to do this alpha, in terms of Dr. Gaskin, Dr. Darrel Gaskin, you're going to be going next. And so I wanted to introduce you in terms of both Professor of Health Economics and Director of the Center for Health Disparity Solutions at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health and Department of Health Policy and Management. Okay, that's a lot. That means you're doing awesome in terms of be there. But I also want to denote something and say something about that role you have, but I also want to say something as I introduce you about Hopkins. So although Michael cannot talk about this publicly yet, because it's not all done, but I am going to lift up, Hopkins has a definite history in this town. And many of us in this room know that history and grew up with that history. But I also will tell you that I am passionately in love with Ron Daniels, the president of Hopkins. And his wife knows, and so does my husband. In terms of, because right now where you are, in terms of what you're working on, and Hopkins having stepped up to do Hopkins Local, and making that commitment on the issue of using their economic power to make a difference, I think it's actually to be an example that's going to lead the way for a number of businesses and anchors in this town. So I'm very pleased to welcome you in your own esteem for the brilliance you bring to this conversation today. But I'm also going to go forward and introduce next Andre Robinson. And Andre, I don't know that you know this, so I needed to share with you as I introduce you that you, in fact, are my soul twin. You don't know that yet.
Okay. But I'm totally cool with it.
Okay,
so
good. For lots of different reasons in terms of, and I'm not even sure, although his bio appears there, in terms of that it really does him justice. In terms of as a community organizer, activist, and consultant with a significant background, director, producer, writer, activist. But what he's done with that is also very much linked all of that together in terms of how do you figure out a strategy that can connect the dots in terms of making a difference around social justice and economic development justice, in terms of coming up with a strategy. And so I'm really excited in terms of bringing that kind of brilliance, which is so much built upon experience, that you've done this elsewhere in terms of bringing that to the conversation today. And so with that, I also want to acknowledge that and look forward to your presentation. The last person I want to introduce, and certainly is not the least, because I also will say that he is home in terms of here at Coppin, in terms of Dr. Smith, actually who retired is the fall of 2013. In terms of after 45 years of public service, to become now the chair of health and health education at Coppin State University. And so that's why I indicated he is home. But that means that he's also bringing his own set of brilliance in terms of you cannot have done what you've done in terms of your career and focusing on health disparities, not just in this country, but also globally, without bringing a level of expertise back to your home. And so thank you, and thank you all. And so we will begin with Dr. Gaskin.
Well, thank you very much for that very kind introduction, and I am certainly mindful of our allotted time, So I want to give you 4 points and 10 minutes or less. Is that all right? 4 points and 10 minutes or less.
Dr. Gaskin is a minister, so I know we can say amen.
So one of the things in which I spend a lot of time thinking about is health and healthcare disparities. And so my first point is that health and healthcare disparities are not only morally unjust, but they're economically stupid. It costs society a whole lot of money to allow certain parts of the nation, certain populations, vulnerable persons, not to get the kind of health care that they need and not to live in environments in which they can remain healthy. It costs us money in terms of lower labor market productivity. It costs us money in additional health care expenditures. And it also costs us money in the fact that when someone passes away prematurely, regardless of whether they are a child or whether they are an adult, a senior, their presence, their absence leaves a hole in the lives of families, which oftentimes others have to come to the aid and help and provide assistance so that that family, those persons can carry on. And so me and my colleagues at the Center for Health Disparity Solutions estimated that the cost of health disparities to our economy was about $1.2 trillion over a 4-year period. That's about the size of the economy of a nation like India, which is the 12th largest economy in the world. And so it is an imperative that our nation figure out what to do about health disparities and health care disparities. My second point is related to this, because oftentimes when we look at these things, what we say is, oh, these poor people, they don't know how to take care of themselves. Or these poor people, they don't know what to do. They should go to the doctor. If these people only knew what to do, they would be doing better. And then we put all of the onus for the solution on these poor people. Well, one of the things in which we highlight is that a lot of what we see with regard to race disparities as well as social economic disparities are actually place disparities in our country. It's where you live, your zip code, as my colleague likes to say, your zip code has more to determine your life expectancy and your risk for disease than your genetic code. And the reason being is because your environment matters. It matters with regard to your physical health. It matters with regard to your psychological health. And if you are in environments in which are depressing to be in, because they're either stressful because we allow crime to exist there, or because they are underdeveloped because there aren't any places in which to do any recreation there, no ability to have any productive activity there, then you're going to see these disparities. So we spend a lot of time trying to convince our colleagues that study this issue, as well as policymakers, that yes, all right, we'll agree with you. You should tell people that they should take care of themselves, that they should brush their teeth, that they should see their doctor once a year. However, if their doctor tells them that they need to eat better and there isn't a grocery store anywhere near their home, or if in fact their doctor tells them to exercise and they're afraid to go outside, or if they go to the park is not well maintained and there is glass and so forth then all of this individual intervention will do us no good. So we say there's an economic burden to health disparities, and health disparities has a lot to do with place, and if we don't do something to address the problems associated with place, then we won't impact them. The third thing that we say, okay, well, now that we've gotten your attention, we need to have some community-based solutions to address these issues. And not to take away from my colleagues who are physicians, but things have to happen outside of the physician office in order to help the population become healthier and more productive. And that means that we have to think about what we call health in all policies, and think about the impact that things in the community have on individuals' health. Now, the easy low-hanging fruit is, okay, well, we need to get some community health workers and send them out into the community. I'm all for that. That's a great idea. I've seen it in some places. It works well. But then, once we get to the community health worker, then we need to start talking about the people who are involved with transportation, people who are involved in the education system, the folks who are working with community development. I used to live not too far from Coppin State. When I was a student a while back, I was a student at Hopkins. I lived in the Evergreen community, if anyone knows where that community is. I used to walk around that community and enjoyed it a great deal, and would come up to Coppin, up to North Avenue. And it didn't look like it looks now. And when I drove up and I saw these two wonderful buildings, it said something to me about the community that is here. And if you don't know what the psychological effect of being in a place that looks like somebody cares has on your ability to learn, your ability to innovate, your ability to sort of think. If you live in a place where it looks like nobody cares, and too often the spaces in which our people live in look like nobody cares. I'm reminded of a community that's near one of our churches in Washington, D.C. It's in Southeast D.C. You walk out down the street, and the way whoever designed there must have been crazy, because it looks like everybody's front door is the back door. It looks like that. It looks like if you walk out the front door, you're actually, sort of in the alley, and it's the street. And so I couldn't imagine living in this place, walking out, growing up in this place, if the street that I live on actually resembles the alley. Because we know what crawls around in alleys, right? And so we need to think about community, and one of the great opportunities that are out there right now is every hospital, not-for-profit hospital in the country, has to put together a community needs assessment now. Have to think about how they're going to impact their community. They're getting tremendous pressure to push things outside the box. This is an opportunity for a community-based organization to say, hey, look, now you need to partner with us, and before you then decide to, send someone out here to do something, why don't you listen to us so that we can do something for the people who live in our communities. My last point is investment. Our communities have been starved with investment. I tried to build a church in Prince George's County. Wouldn't recommend you try to do that. Unless you have a, just, oh Lord help us. But, so I tried to build a church there. And one of the things that I discovered is that the banks really gave us a terrible time. Absolutely terrible time. They asked for a tome of paper. Send back a little letter. Saying, no thank you, we won't want your business. And so they, ultimately, we bought a building. They required us to put so much money in the building. We have so much equity in this building. When our attorney the title attorney saw the deal, he said, this deal is just obscene. I've never seen a deal have to go through where people have had to put so much equity in their own building in order to make this work. So where am I going with this? If you are an entrepreneur in our community and you're trying to do something, because I meet people who have great imaginations, great ideas, want to do different interesting things, that see needs in the community, want to push those needs forward. Who operates a restaurant and opens it up with all of their own money? Nobody. Nobody except folks who try to do things in, not Prince George, I mean, but, so you understand exactly what I'm talking about, in the sense that if we have to convince the folks who are lending money that they need to stop their practices that they're doing with our communities, because not only is it stopping the economic growth and stunting our ability to employ our people to do good work, but it's also hindering the health of our people, because then we get folks who walk outside and their front yard is the alley. So I'm going to stop there and pass it on to the next.
Hey everybody. Good evening. Hope everybody's still awake. I spent the first few hours after I received the invitation for this trying to figure out, okay, well, I'm not an academic, so all of this esteemed gentleman to my left, I don't know how I got on an all-male panel too, by the way, but we'll talk about that later on. One of the things that I think that also brought me back to Baltimore, because I'm returning to Baltimore after about a 5-year absence, is that primarily my background is as a producer. And I don't know if any of you produce or know the world of producers, but primarily we work backwards from the result that we're supposed to achieve, because often we're only paid from that result at the end. Yes, exactly. Let's hear for producers. Exactly. Somebody feels my pain up there. So one of the things that the Mount Royal Community Development Corporation that I was brought in to be the executive director of is sponsoring the Innovation Village. And the Innovation Village is largely answers some of the things that some of the panelists have already talked about, which is being intentional and looking at defensible space at a scale. So we looked at, and this is primarily a resident-led initiative that looked at the assets in this community and a city that is sort of woefully suffering from the results of generations of divestment, where investment that was placed in schools was diverted to the incarceral machine. And if you want to know why we're not keeping up, you can just look at that math, and I don't have to lecture anybody in this room about that. Right. That math speaks for itself. So if you steal investment from schools and you hold that out to kids that somehow they're supposed to magically make all that, to square that by themselves, then the teachers and the administrators are somehow supposed to make up for the fact that you've actually robbed the schools of their investment. And then you wonder why the neighborhoods look like that. Well, it's actually not really that much of a mystery. So one of my sort of teachers and mentors, Bishop T.D. Jakes, said to us one time we were working on a project, if you don't build anything, you're not really doing anything. That building is very, very important. So in looking at Baltimore and that sort of defensible space, which we sort of just drew arbitrary lines around the assets in West Baltimore, and they were Mondawmin Mall, down to Coppin State, down to MLK, and over to MICA, and including the University of Baltimore. And if you look at all of those assets, plus one of the most important things to millennials or innovators, which is transportation. And in West Baltimore, all of the transportation assets in this city, for the most part, are on the west side. But we also looked at where the startup and the accelerator and all this new business that's generated about 244 new innovator and accelerator communities, they were all on the east side, like literally an apartheid line that ran down the road. And that's, some of it's arbitrary. It's stimulated by Johns Hopkins and Kevin Plank and so forth and so on, but a lot of it is not arbitrary. Because if you look at all these disparities that I'm sure people in this room know a lot of things about, they lay almost exactly over your segregationist maps from 1910.
That's right.
And if you stack all that up, if you did a 3D version of that, then all of your food disparities and all your work disparities and all the rest of them lie almost to the street over those same maps. So therefore, couldn't be an accident on one level. So producers are supposed to solve problems. And part of the problem is, okay, so knowing all that, which makes absolutely no difference if you don't build anything, it makes no difference if you don't do something about those things, require first that you look at your assets. And this community is asset rich. It's just that the buildings and the neighborhoods don't reflect anything like that. There are a lot of streets that look like the back alley. They are not clean, and we are the most probably over-policed community in America, yet we get the least police protection.
That's right.
So there are a lot of assets and challenges and disparities that are all put on the table, and I have met in this city over the 5 years that I've been working in and around Baltimore. I grew up in Washington, D.C. Some of the most, I would have to say, talented and inventive and creative and real genius in this community, but it is locked up in silos.
Yeah.
Some of the silos are at universities. Please don't send me any more white papers. I've got a stack of them. The problems have been very well studied. Thank you to the universities and the philanthropic organizations here. And it's all saying the same thing. Guess what? Sea levels are rising, sky's falling. So we can cut to the chase about how will we win back that investment that has been diverted to the incarceral machine and put it back in the places where you're going to do training and workforce development and skills development, because the jobs that are coming, that are not even actually coming, it's actually already arrived. That future is actually already here, to borrow a phrase from William Gibson. It's just not evenly distributed. So you have a city that has all these phenomenal assets. It's one of the most important cities in America, but unfortunately has been telling only one story about itself for 2 generations. You go to Germany and ask somebody about Baltimore, it's like, oh, I know Baltimore, The Wire. You go to Baltimore, you'll be addicted to crack by the end of the afternoon, the next day you'll be murdered. We know Baltimore. That's why we're not coming there. So, despite all of the work that all of us in this room are doing, despite these great universities, despite these great neighborhoods, and more importantly, these great people that are here, a lot of genius locked up in the youth prison. There's a lot of genius and talent locked up in other places. And if you are a producer, or you are an inventor, or you are an innovator, you're looking for talent. Not necessarily the degree, although that's important in some places, but there's a lot of maker spaces in and around the city that new things are being created all the time. And they're primarily looking for skills and talent. And if any of you are teachers, and any of you teach at the elementary school level, waiting till high school is too late.
That's right.
Waiting for 11th grade to try to sort of address some of this stuff, way too late.
Yeah.
We need to catch them where the pipeline is catching them, and that's the 4th grade.
That's right.
Or younger.
Yeah.
So if you can provide some intervention at that level, then you can make beautiful places. You can actually ask them for ideas. You actually need young people in the room when you're talking about what they need. So you're talking about stuff that young people need with no young people involved, you're in danger. And if we go back to our organizations or our segregated spaces that a lot of these millennials are working in, maybe not for the same reasons as their parents and grandparents, but there's still, a lot of people go back to all white rooms, or all black rooms, you're kind of sort of in danger. And we should present that as a clear and present danger to the future that we intend to see. If April taught us anything, it's that you cannot build a wall high enough to keep that disparity out from you. You can't actually just create a little safe zone and have that not affect you, because I think the universities will all tell you all their enrollment went down. All of it went down across the board by that, because you actually don't need to drive to Baltimore to find out what's going on. There's something called Google Maps, and they have it in other countries, and they can go, oh, heck no, I'm changing my language just because you're here. So I'm going to also yield the rest of my time back, because I know we have questions, because a lot of the genius is actually in this room, and I invite you to learn more about the Innovation Village. This is a framework on which many of the community plans that many people in this room that worked on neighborhood plans and the Grandma Plan and the Upton Plan and the Plan for generations. And those plans went on shelves and started gathering dust. This is not that. This is a scaffold on which to activate those plans, use the genius that's in this room and other places that are just wandering around sometimes just unincorporated. They're not at the NAACP. They're not in church sometimes. They're not actually connected with any organization. They're wandering around. And if they're not in school and they're not in a job, it becomes a vicious cycle back through the incarceral machine. And therefore, that's all of our genius locked up for another generation, because every sentence is a life sentence. If you can't get a job, and you can't get food stamps, and you can't get in public housing, and you can't, and you still have to, even if they decriminalize marijuana and the employers are still asking you to do a urine test, you are still trapped in that machine. So we have to look at our legislators and our politicians and our preachers and our mothers and fathers and grandparents and call them. This is an all call. Everybody's got to show up. If you're showing up on the sidelines just to complain about what we're doing, I'm kind of sort of interested, but not really. I'm looking for sweat equity, and these neighborhoods are beautiful neighborhoods, and they didn't always look like this, and this is our opportunity to do something about that now. So I'll stop right there and take the rest of it up.
I'm going to go ahead and stand up at this podium, because I don't normally speak with notes, but I kind of sort of had the feeling I was going to be the last one. So I wanted to have some notes so that I would stay on track, okay? So bear with me on this, okay? Please allow me to first begin by saying thank you to Jan. I want to say thank you to the Black Mental Health Alliance. And I really honestly want to thank each of you. I thank Jan and the Black Mental Health Alliance for having this opportunity here at Coppin State University. And I thank each of you for coming out to participate in this event. Welcome to Coppin State University. Yeah. Probably should have done that first, huh? For years it was said that Coppin State University is the best kept secret in the region. As a result of the spotlight that has been trained on decades-old neglect and abuses and disparities and inequities in Baltimore, the secret is not a secret anymore. Coppin State University is the incubator for the study of health disparities and health inequities in all that ails Baltimore, always has been. Nestled between Mondawmin, North Avenue, Park Heights, Winchester, Sandtown, we also recruit health research subjects from each of those communities, but we get them also from Cherry Hill and Brooklyn Homes and Bull Neck and Turner Station and Perkin Homes and McCullough. I know them, okay? And we transform those urban health research subjects into college students, and then into scholars, and then into health scientists and environmental health specialists and telehealth specialists and health equity research specialists and urban health professionals. The best kept secret is not a secret anymore. The cat is truly out of the bag. Linda Tirado, in the book Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America, suggests that if you want to know anything about health disparities and health inequities and environmental injustices or poverty, at some point, you should probably ask those who are most affected. Now, right here, I've written for my 15-minute presentation, because I was told I had 15 minutes, but my two colleagues relinquished some of their time, so I'm going to go ahead on with my script. For my 15-minute presentation, that's the path that I want to take, but I want to begin with, I'm a professor, I want to begin with some definitions. Now, we all know that the day is far spent, it's getting late, but please don't worry that I'm going to keep you here too long past your bedtime, okay? I promise you that everything I've said since I began speaking is part of my 15-minute presentation. I actually timed this so that I would be finished in under 14 minutes, so I'm only going to take a few. So let's synchronize our watches, okay? Make sure that I keep my promise to you. When most of us think about equity, we tend to use it interchangeably with equality. But equity and equality are actually two different things. Equality suggests that everybody gets the same thing. Equity suggests that different people get different things based on different needs. So for most of us, we could probably define health as the absence of disease and disability, or the state of wellness and well-being. And as a matter of fact, that is actually the World Health Organization's definition of health, and it's been that way for the last 50 years. That's a good definition, but Diana Hale's 2015 in the book Invitation to Health actually defines health as physical health and mental health and emotional health and spiritual health and financial health. And as a result, you get an altogether different picture of the definition of health. She paints a much different picture. So now you can come to understand a whole lot better the differences between equality and equity, and you probably already see where I'm going with this, right? According to the American Psychological Association, social economic status is often measured by a combination of education, income, and occupation. The APA suggests that work stress has been identified as a risk factor for hypertension, diabetes, and even cardiovascular disease. According to the APA, smoking prevalence, and you all know this, smoking prevalence among blue-collar workers is twice the amount of white-collar workers. Lower wage earners are more likely to work for small businesses and therefore have less access to health insurance, paid vacations, and even sick days. All these are influences of the health and social economic status. According to Maryland Poverty Profiles, and I quote, "Maryland is the wealthiest state in the United States of America, yet 50 years after Lyndon Johnson launched the war on poverty, 1 in every 10 Marylanders lives below the poverty line. Almost 575,000 individuals," unquote. A 2008 study conducted by the Commission to Build a Healthy America, entitled "Where We Live Matters to Our Health," states that lead poisoning irreversibly affects brain and nervous system development, resulting in lower intelligence and also reading disabilities. Substandard housing conditions as simple as water leaks, poor ventilation, and even pest infestation lead to poor health. Residential crowding has been linked to physical illnesses such as asthma and lead paint poisoning and tuberculosis and respiratory infections, and it goes on and on and on. In a study published in November 2015 in the issue of Environmental Health Perspective, researchers found a link between air pollution and heart disease, particularly among people who live near construction sites and near power plants. According to a study done by the National Bureau of Economic Research, 2.2% higher prevalences of violent crime was found in neighborhoods that were near major interstate highways. I find that pretty fascinating. We also know that there's a direct link between crime and violent crime and alcohol use and drug use. Depending on who you ask and where you live, statistically speaking, 1 in every 10 persons in Baltimore City are substance abusers or actually addicted to heroin, and 1 in every 5 people in Baltimore City are HIV positive. According to a study published by healthaffairs.org, education is one of the most basic of the social economic factors. It shapes future economic and occupational opportunities and earning potential. Now here's a very interesting one for you, and I'm almost at my end, believe it or not. The American Heart Association in January 15 found that positive factors in youth are linked to better heart health later in life. Now we already know that, but a 2015 study conducted at Northwestern University suggests, now get this now, 2015 study at Northwestern University suggests that youth from low-income families who succeed academically and socially may actually pay a price for that with their health. Yeah, think about that for a second. I quote, "A disadvantaged youth striving for favorable life outcomes have substantial barriers to overcome and competing demands to balance, including resource-deprived schools, family obligations, and managing social identity threats. The result is they end up with body cells that are biologically old relative to their chronological age." Isn't that interesting? We've experienced 50 years of the war on poverty, but recent statistics suggest that only about a 2% change in the overall poverty rate has happened in all those years. As a result of the war on poverty, many anti-poverty programs were created, many health disparities and health inequities were examined and even tackled, but according to Linda Tirado, we never asked the people who were most affected. We asked health professionals and social service professionals and researchers from both disciplines and politicians, and even created community groups and utilized civic associations and neighborhood associations. We created community leaders and civic association presidents and vice presidents and neighborhood association officers, but we never bothered to ask the individuals who were most affected. Several years ago in Norfolk, Virginia, there was a plan that was developed called Neighborhood University. And in this program, civic associations and civic association officers and neighborhood associations and neighborhood association officers committed to learning the process of creating systemic change within their community. What made that program so very unique and effective was not only were the community leaders and the neighborhood leaders involved, but so were the community residents, the neighbors in the neighborhoods. Anyone who wanted to become involved and who was willing to commit to learning could be invited to the program. Norfolk's most recent innovation to that novel approach is called Neighbors Building Neighborhoods Academy. 3 weeks ago, they hosted a program called Grants 101. Building blocks to successful neighborhood grants. The solution to the problem of health inequities and health disparities and other community concerns became as easy as ABCD. ABCD is the acronym for Assets-Based Community Development. You see, when you seek out the participation of neighborhood residents, when you ask them what they want, they can't always tell you what they want, but they can tell you what they don't want. Okay? They can't always tell you they can't always tell you what's right, but they can tell you what's wrong. They're not always solution-oriented, and so we've got to teach them to focus on the assets that they already have in their communities, their neighborhoods, their homes, and build on those assets. The fascinating thing about assets-based community development is that in all of its literature, every paragraph focuses on the individual in the community, in the neighborhood, not just the community leaders. Not just the neighborhood leaders. So here we are in West Baltimore at Coppin State University, nestled between Mondawmin and North Avenue and Park Heights and Winchester Sandtown, with all of these health disparities and health inequities and social ills sitting in the catbird seat. Yep, we're sitting in the catbird seat, drawing potential social change agents, potential health change agents from Cherry Hill and Brooklyn Homes and Bull Neck and Turner Station and McCullough Homes and Perkin Homes and you name them. And then we're dispatching them back into their neighborhoods, back into their communities to talk to the people that they left when they came here to get the education. And they're creating change, systemic change, one person at a time, one household at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one community at a time. As simple as A, B, C, D. Thank you.
Thank you all. We're going to open up for questions, but I want to ask before I do that, we can give all of our panelists a round of applause again. My statement is African Americans are not broken. Yet structural racism, systemic racism, creates toxic environments and toxic policies. So when people of color do not thrive, we ask, as in prospective employees, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as manufacturers, we ask what's wrong with them. There's something wrong with that picture. That African Americans as a people are not broken. And so the question is in terms of what are those solutions. You've heard from our panelists, some of them, in terms of what are the solutions that builds upon the assets that lie within people of color. And recognizing that that also has to include transactional solutions, but it has to include transformative solutions. Solutions that go deep to systemic racism and policies. And so with that, asking for questions, but I've also been asked by the Black Mental Health Alliance to also ask you for what are your added solutions. Added solutions. This is not a room full of people of non-assets. This is a room full of assets. And so we ask you if you have questions, but we also ask you to put forward some of your solutions or some of your clarifying points to add to the solutions you've heard. And with that, I'm opening it up.
Real quick, my name is Brian Sims. I think, and I had a couple of questions, but I'll address the last thing you just said about what are some of the solutions. I think that, so last Friday I was at Hopkins Community Data Driven Day, so it's a bunch of nonprofits and meeting with researchers and so on and so forth. And I was representing my nonprofit there, and a woman sat at my table, so it was two people sitting there from two different perspectives. And as she listened to what our organization does, she's like, "Oh, I don't think I belong here. I'll just listen." And so what my organization is looking to do is to reduce health disparities by addressing social determinants through non-clinical means. And so one of the solutions, I think, and after hearing her say that she didn't think she belonged there, because what her focus was working through the churches to address gun violence. And so I think that a lot of people and organizations and businesses and communities, they don't draw a link between some of the social determinants and the impact they have on health. And I said, no, actually, that's a great perspective, because I was listening to Dr. Nguyen speak a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things she said about gun violence is that it really can be, it's a public safety, public health issue, but it also can be a mental health issue, because if you're afraid to go outside, you're afraid to walk down the street, you're afraid to step outside of your house, it has an impact on you and the way that it impacts you mentally. And I think, so one of the keys, I think, is to be able to draw the link between everything that goes on in the communities and how that impacts our health. And I think that, once people start to see solutions from that perspective, I think we can start to draw a link between some outcome-based approaches to health disparities and addressing those things.
I think that's excellent. Other solutions?
Solution. My name is James Hamlin. I'm the owner and operator of the Avenue Bakery on historic Pennsylvania Avenue. And I grew up in the community. And my background is human resources and community relations. And I was with the United Parcel Service for 35 and a half years, partly in human resources. And what we had identified was that the quality of candidates that we were getting in had begun to change. And so as a community relations manager, I made sure that we focused on the education system, really starting at the middle school, not high school, because that's where the decisions are made. And then after retiring in 2003, I came to historic Pennsylvania Avenue to work on the redevelopment of that particular community. A lot of us don't understand and know and realize today that that community, Pennsylvania Avenue and its surrounding communities, is the most historic African American community in the country. And we haven't taken care of it. We haven't developed it. And so in that process, I came to Pennsylvania Avenue really to rebuild the Rural Theater, which was part of the Chitlin Circuit. Had a price tag of $42 million. If I had the $42 million in my pocket, the community wasn't ready. We worked on the community, we put together a development plan under the master plan, and we worked that plan. And a lot of the commercial plan has been completed. But the point I'm making is that here we are in the most historic African American community in the country. Here we have tourists that are coming on a consistent basis. And we have all the history, but the tour buses come, they stop at Lafayette and Pennsylvania Avenue, and they go downtown and spend their money. Why? Because we haven't developed or forced the development of our infrastructure to take advantage of that industry. Third largest industry in the city of Baltimore. In 2003 was a $3 billion industry. Now it's 5.7, and African American tourism is the great part of that. So my solution is redeveloping that historic community, but at the same token, you have to attract people back to the community so that they feel safe. And for years, we tried to attract businesses to Pennsylvania Avenue and were unsuccessful. So 5 years ago, and this is our 5th anniversary, I opened the Avenue Bakery. And one of the housing commissioners told me, he said, Jim, if you want to get people back to Pennsylvania Avenue, you have to put something there that you can't get anyplace else. The name of the bakery is the Avenue Bakery, home of Popeye's Rolls. And I'm telling you this because we have a clientele that runs from Virginia all the way up to Pennsylvania. We have people that know about Pennsylvania Avenue from California to the East Coast. We have, and you can check the website, and I'm saying this because, yes, after retiring, my wife is not happy. And speaking of sleep, normally I'm asleep this time, but I made a point because at 1 o'clock, I'll be over on Pennsylvania Avenue baking those rolls and for the community. But the other part of it is not just about the baking. It's about educating our community on its history and legacy. And if anybody's been by there, and you can check the website, there's nothing but historical artwork to educate our community. So my point is that we have to invest in our own community. We must develop our own plan and not wait for somebody to come in and say, this is what you need to plan for your community. And we have to work the plan. And so that's my solution. And I want to take Andre and say thank you for Innovative Village, because some of the resources that we need to finish, because we have a $96 million project we're working on. And because we have to build that infrastructure, that business infrastructure in that community. Every community in this city has its own business community. If you look at Highlandtown, you look at Hampton, you look at Fells Point, you look at, I don't care where it is. We're the only community in the city that has our business district ripped out, and it's very difficult to create that walkable community and create the jobs within the community. So that's my solution. That's a plan I've been working on for 13 years. We're still working on that plan, and we hope to really make a difference, because this community has been neglected since 1968, and there's many reasons for it. Everything from the Vietnam War to the you name it. And until we force and invest ourselves, nothing's going to change. We change the environment, we change the people, and it has to be a holistic approach, because we have to also train and develop around that third largest industry as well as technology
and everything else.
Okay.
That's my solution.
Somebody wants to respond to that in terms of adding to that solution, but I want to go back to the gentleman's point, ask for other solutions, because your point about the issue of trauma and the linkage in terms of that around how we often don't see the connection as part of solution. I would say even to this conversation, although you linked it back to Andre in terms of the innovative village, that there are other dot connectors in this room in terms of around that agenda. And so it's a part of the solution. It's not just that isolation, it's how do we connect the dots in terms of the solutions. Are there other solutions?
Can I just underscore one thing that he just
Yes.
said? I was involved with the restoration of the Lincoln Theater on U Street in Washington, D.C., when it was just us and Ben's Chili Bowl. Anybody been to U Street lately?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what happens when you actually, that building was supposed to be torn down. When you actually fight to reclaim that history, Marion Barry, God rest his soul, then moved the district building to 14th and U, and the rest is absolute history. Now, the other part of that, you don't want gentrification to come in and sweep everybody out, but we could not convince anybody to buy those homes that were going for back taxes back in 1985. So it underscores your point that when you actually have a place that you actually protect in that way, it actually stimulates the rest of it that goes with it.
Other solutions?
Oh,
And then somebody right behind you. I'm going to go behind you. I'm going to skip you because I know that you're part of that conversation. So I'm going to go behind you. Yes.
Okay, I just really think that the
Can you
basis.
speak up?
I really think that the basis falls on education. As most people know, black students are disproportionately placed in special education, and that results from, you know, their home environment, especially in the inner city. So when they come into school, they lag behind their peers in language, and then when they get to about 3rd or 4th grade, they further lag behind their peers because the curricula changes. And then, you know, there's the school to prison pipeline, and then many of them are on certain tracks where they are unable to get diplomas, so they're on certificate tracks. And those certificate tracks don't translate into employment. So I just think the basis is education, and I know that there's a variety of education programs that are, you know, in the works now and have already been tried. But I think a more concerted effort, a greater emphasis should be placed on education because it's crucial, it's critical.
Thank you. Another solution? Yes.
Well, we're at the BMHA, and I'm surprised nobody has said mental health. And so I just wanted to bring that up, really just to throw it out there, because I'm surrounded by mental health professionals. I'm not one myself. But looking at opportunities to infuse mental health into non-traditional places, such as school, such as, you know, in community-based settings, to really address some of the issues of trauma that you mentioned, and how that might allow us as a community to function better in various settings. So I just wanted to throw that out there to see what the other mental health professionals in the room think about how this could be woven into the solution.
Yes.
I'm doing that. I'm actually just a member, a resident of Baltimore City.
Can you speak up?
I'm a resident of Baltimore City for the last 55 years.
Wow.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about trauma, because I've heard everything. I go to a lot of these meetings. I see everybody trying to figure out what's the solution. You know, I need to know exactly what result are we trying to get to. You know, I am a person in long-term recovery from mental health and substance abuse. Are we going to the individuals and seeing exactly what they want? Are they hearing a lot of these meetings? I know I am, because I sit here. But are we going back to the individual? Because what I believe is that to work to support the individual will support the family, that will support the community, that will bring results to the system. You know, so I just want to know how much of this is we taking through really out in the community instead of saying we're doing outreach, but we're doing outtouch. You know, so that I think if we do more outreach, more collaborative effort instead of my program, your program, my program, that we could have better results.
Yeah, several people that want to respond to that, but I would also offer for Black Mental Health Alliance that probably should be a topic at one time, because there are a number of efforts in terms of that, but I know that Michael wanted and Jan, you wanted to respond. Michael.
Just a quick response. I just wanted to talk about how early in the cycle the trauma starts. And how seldom we understand or recognize when it happens. Quick example, I was assigned as a psychologist to a school in the South Bronx. I got a call early one morning from teachers for a class. Little kids, we'll call them Johnny. And they were just, they were exercised about the fact that Johnny was under the table and they couldn't get him out. So they called me because they thought he was exhibiting some aberrant behaviors, right? So I got there and they said he was aphasic and he was showing signs of dissociative behavior and all sorts of things, and this kid really was ready for medication based on what they were saying. A cleaning lady walked by and said to the teachers, "What's going on in here? What's going on?" They said, "Johnny's been on the table for 2 hours and we can't get him out." She said, "Johnny, get your ass from out from under there." And he got out, he came out, but here's the thing, she hugged him. And he began to talk with her about his morning. My point is, which I hope is obvious, is the lack of recognition that, first of all, that was a person. And how quickly we make assumptions about what people's position and needs and moments are like, and how early that trauma starts, and the cycle that if that kid had, if we had not intervened, that kid could very easily have been labeled something and set on a track that he could never get off of. And so I think recognizing the humanity in our folk, how easily people respond to a smile, to being hugged, an expression of love and tenderness. I'm amazed at how often with people, and particularly for Black men, we have such a limited range of expression, of emotional expression. You know? What's up? Sorry. How you feel? Sorry. You feeling better? Sorry. You know? But beyond that, a smile sometimes brings out a whole nother dimension of what that brother is feeling and wanting to connect with. So I don't know. Go.
Karen. A couple of things. One is that, and Alma and Anel can attest to this, when we started doing this, we did not want to charge for it because we wanted the community to be involved. We wanted the community to come. We didn't want it to feel exclusionary or that there were barriers up that would prohibit the community from being involved. And so that's why we've been working so diligently to ensure that we did not attach a registration fee. That's one thing. The first forum that we had outside of the planning meetings, Dr. Mindy Fullerlove was our speaker. And after she spoke, she said to me and Alma and Anel, so what I would suggest to you, because this is what she's done, this is what she's known for, is that you walk the community.
Yes.
That you walk the community, that you talk to the people in the community, and you find out what their for is. What is it that they want to do for their community? And so we have attempted to do that. We haven't done a great job at it, but individuals like you, ma'am, are people that we want to be involved, and we want you to be talking to me about what it is you think we can do differently. And I want to work with other organizations that are doing the exact same thing and want to find out from the community, because we know that that's key, you know, in relationship to what we're doing, is that we find out from the community what their for is, and then how we are able to participate in that process, not create the solution and then kind of give it to you and say, we know best.
Right. Yeah. Ma'am, Mayor?
Yes.
Ma'am, I appreciate your, hello? I appreciate your comment because it fits very, very nicely into what I was talking about. We need to get out, as Jan just said, we need to get out in those communities. And one of the easiest solutions is what I think that we're doing right here at Coppin, and even over at Johns Hopkins. We're actually sending students from those communities back into those communities where they fit, and they fit very well. But it's not going to work very well if, as Jan just said, if we're always dictating. So we have to actually find ways to get people from the communities out and get them individually involved too. Thank you very much. I appreciate that question. Thank you.
So, young man in the back, you're last.
First of all, hello everyone. Hello. My name is William Lassane. I'm a student here at Coppin. And here's some great things. It's a way to sign up. I would like to. I'm from Baltimore. I'm 27. I'm from Park Heights. Lived in Baltimore all my life, born and raised. I think it's exposure. I think that most times in this generation, we get overexposed to a lot of nonsense and unnecessary things. But what we're not exposed to is a lot of positive things that make us holistic as individuals and people. So I wrote down just a few points, but really the overarching theme was basic fundamentals. Food, clothes, shelter, hygiene, job training, spirituality, education, counseling, financial literacy, and self-defense. I think that some of those things, if we were able to hit on those things, we would be holistic in our approach, and you would create a much better people and generation in Baltimore, and thus for the society. What I would ask, or what I would say, or hope, is that everyone that's in the room could create a database so that we would know a database, a daily leaflet, something that we would know that these forums take place, and that we would be able to access the programs and services that are being offered. I think that what saved me as a youth who doesn't have a criminal record, who doesn't have kids, who works, and who's trying to become an even more successful black man in this generation, is just the exposure of another side of life. So all the different vices that I've heard, drug dealing, prostitution, crime, abuse of any nature, I've seen or experienced in some form or fashion in my household and outside. But I think it's the spirituality of family members, or just the exposure that you can go beyond your situation. So I'm appreciative of this forum, and I hope that it happens more often, and I hope that it's publicized not just for people who are in mental health professions or in that major or even in the nursing building or whatever the case may be. Everybody that is involved with Coppin and connected with Coppin and thus Baltimore and Maryland should be here. And so, I applaud you guys for being on social media, using Periscope and different things like that. I mean, this is beautiful. This room should be packed. People should be standing outside trying to get what's in here. So I would say that we need to create a database. We need to be intentional and serious about what we're talking about. So we can take this from the boardroom of the classroom to out in the streets, and you're going to see just the impact that's going to be made. It's just going to be phenomenal. I'm sorry if I took too much time, but I think a critical aspect that we don't talk about, and I haven't heard many institutions or places talk about, is self-defense. You hear a lot of people talking about gun violence and things like that, and that's because people are using guns the wrong way, and that's because they're scared or because they have easy access illegally. And so I think that we need to get into an aspect where if a woman is walking to her car, she feels safe because she can defend herself. If a young man is, out there and he's alone catching the bus or whatever the case may be, he doesn't have to worry about picking up a gun or a knife because he can defend himself intelligently and physically if necessary. So I think that's an important aspect as well that we miss. But counseling, just young people want somebody to talk to. And if they had someone to talk to, you wouldn't have so much homicide and you wouldn't have so much suicide. Young people feel they can't connect with the older generation because if we be honest, the older generation doesn't like to tell their business. They don't like to tell what they've been through. They don't like to tell what they've been through to how they overcame. And sometimes the things that we go through aren't for us, it's for others. And so I think that, we just have to get in that approach that I can dialogue with anyone of any age, young or old, and y'all must dialogue back with us. We actually need each other. And so we just have to get to a unified aspect in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody. I'm going to bring the mic back to Shannon.